Thank you for granting me this important adjournment debate on diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma, or what I will call DIPG for the rest of this adjournment debate. This is a rare childhood brain tumour disease. The reason I applied for this debate is to raise the awareness of DIPG, highlight the need for more research and development, try and get better treatments into the condition, and to bring to this Parliament the heroic story of 7-year-old Luke Stewart and his mum Jennifer Stewart, dad Mark and his grandfather Robert Ure. DIPG, Mr Deputy Speaker, is an aggressive form of tumour on the brainstem. Fewer than 40 children a year in the UK develop them, but they account for 10 to 15% of all brain tumours in children. In the month of October 2017, it had been reported officially that 38 children died of DIPG, and there is no cure. Although rare, it's actually the second most common type of primary high-grade brain tumours in children. DIPG originates in the area of the brainstem called the pons, the area of the brain that is responsible for a number of critical bodily functions such as breathing, sleeping and indeed blood pressure. Not all cases of DIPG are identical, and it can affect each child differently, including pressure on the cranial nerve, long tract or cerebrum. Childhood brain tumours are classified according to the type of cells, whether they are diffuse or focal, and the grade of aggressiveness. Therefore, these particular tumours are high-grade, aggressive and relentless, growing extremely quickly, often spreading throughout the brainstem and into the spinal cord. Sadly, this means that they are very dangerous, difficult to treat and have poor prognosis. Although it is not yet known what causes DIPG tumours, there is currently ongoing research aimed at discovering their genetic causes, which could help with early detection and the development of future treatments. I'm happy to give way.
Thank you for giving way, and congratulate him at this late hour and bringing this very important issue to the House for consideration, and also because it is one of those diseases where there is no treatment, no cure and no survival rate. But if we want to find a way forward, then we need the research and development. And what we're seeking for is the Minister to give us a response tonight which will be positive and responsive to the honourable gentleman's response and request to this House. Does he feel that now is the time to have that research and development in place?
Yeah, I welcome the intervention, and indeed will come on to the research development. I've been in this House 7 years now, and I live in hope of getting a positive response from the Treasury bench. So perhaps tonight we will get that far, and I'm sure we will. Mr Deputy Speaker, I welcome this research. However, the current lack of research, available information, awareness of the condition and effective treatments can make it all the more distressing for those diagnosed with DIPG, as well as their extended families. When it comes to treating the tumours, patients are usually offered courses of radiotherapy of between 3 to 6 weeks, and due to the dangers of operating on such a critical area of the brain, surgery for some is simply not an option. In the UK, various studies show that chemotherapy is ineffective in treating childhood DIPGs, although it is used in innovative ways in other countries like Mexico, which I'll come on to shortly. Because treatment options for DIPGs are extremely limited, the prognosis for children diagnosed is poor. Although each child's condition is unique, 70% of children with DIPG are not likely to survive for more than a year after diagnosis, and 90% do not survive 2. The lack of knowledge of this condition means that children and their families are living day to day. With greater investment and research into this condition, we might be one step closer to finding out more about the specific genes and molecules involved in DIPG tumour formation. This vital research should go on to create innovative new treatments, meaning that 40 more children a year, as we've already heard, who are struck down by this disease, could go on to become the doctors, scientists and even politicians of the future. It's important that we give these children the opportunities they deserve and the hope their families certainly need. Mr Deputy Speaker, famous astronaut Neil Armstrong's daughter Karen died of DIPG 40 years ago at the age of just 2, and yet to date there has been very little advancement in the treatment offered. This is devastating for parents. One such story is that of Luke Stewart. Luke is a 7-year-old boy, happy, healthy, active, kind and caring. He comes from a loving family, mum, dad and 2 little brothers, Lewis 5 and Lachlan, who's just 1. In January this year, the world was blown apart when Luke was diagnosed with DIPG. Doctors advised Luke's mum and dad that he could only survive 6 to 9 months if he were to receive radiation treatment, the only option offered by the NHS in the UK. I can't imagine what that kind of news does to a parent. The family were informed that radiation treatment would only prolong Luke's life by a few months and make him more comfortable, but that he would not survive. The Stewart family were advised by the NHS that there were no treatments available worldwide or any clinical trials that could help their son, and that on completion of the radiation treatment, he would only receive palliative care. The family were broken by this news, but they knew they had to keep fighting for Luke and started search for hope elsewhere. And they started an incredible journey to Mexico to save their son's life. The journey to Monterrey began when, during a visit to Chelsea Football Club training ground, they met a family from London whose daughter had the same condition. They had known of each other from Facebook conversations, but were totally unaware that both families would be at this venue at the same time. The London family were leaving for Mexico within days so their daughter could receive a new groundbreaking treatment. This gave the Stewart family renewed hope. They researched the entire programme, which is called intra-arterial chemotherapy, whereby they place catheters into the base and femoral arteries and systematically deliver FDA-approved drugs into the brainstem. They have also combined this treatment with dendritic and T-cell immunotherapy. The Stewart family left for Mexico at the beginning of May, when they witnessed Luke's condition deteriorating rapidly. This was the only hope they had to offer Luke at this time, their last hope as a family. Not only was the family in emotional turmoil, having to deal with such a devastating situation, but they had to continually fundraise to enable them to have the money available for this treatment. I'm happy to give way.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. The London family he refers to are actually my constituents, the Lau family, and I just wanted to pick up specifically on this point, which is no one can imagine what a family goes through with this kind of diagnosis. But I've been struck by how much greater pressure is placed on families as a result of being willing to move heaven and earth and literally move across the earth to make sure their children get access to treatment that could potentially extend life, but at considerable cost. Does he not agree with me that the government should look urgently at what can be done to make sure that any family who can access the treatment doesn't have finance as a barrier to being able to do so?
Absolutely, and that's one of my key asks to the government. And indeed, when a family put in the situation where they're about to lose their child, they only have the hope of trying anything they can find, and this is the journey that many families, including your constituent, have taken to Mexico. When Luke arrived in Mexico, Mr Deputy Speaker, with his family, it made him the 7th child worldwide to receive this groundbreaking treatment. He was also only the 2nd child from the UK. MakeDIPGhistory.com is the website where people can see more about this condition and indeed the history of it. Luke's clinical condition on his arrival in Mexico was extremely serious. This once active, confident and independent little boy couldn't walk properly, was constantly falling over, was always tired, and his previously happy demeanour had changed completely. During this period, he regularly talked to his parents about dying, no words a parent should hear from their own child. The family spent 4 months in Mexico. During this time, Luke received 6 IA treatments and 4 immunotherapy treatments. The costs associated with these treatments and all living and travelling expenses were self-funded by the family as a result of the generosity and financial support they received through their Just Giving page. During this period of time, Luke's clinical condition improved dramatically. He was outgoing, happy, walking without any risks of falling over, running, playing with his brothers, communicating normally with his family and making no further mention to his parents about him dying. In the time that Luke had been receiving this treatment, his tumour had shrunk. The cancer activity was lower. His new cell generation was high. His cyst has shrunk and become pure fluid. His clinical improvement means that he can live a life as a 7-year-old in the knowledge that he is 11 months past diagnosis, a point at which the NHS said he would not survive. Mr Deputy Speaker, as if it were a miracle, Luke is now back at school. It is too soon to tell, but Luke's improvement is an enormous step in the right direction. Cancer treatments are by their very nature evolutionary, so do we not need to embrace this treatment instead of ignoring it? Luke's parents had no hope. Their son would die. They had to at least try. Luke and his mum, and often his granddad, Robert, now require to go back to Mexico every 5 weeks for a period of 5 days to ensure that he continues to receive the groundbreaking treatments. Before and after each treatment, Luke gives a sporty thumbs up to tell the world on Twitter that he's okay. And now people from all over the world are posting selfies with the hashtag #ThumbsUpForLuke. And you can follow everything about Luke's progress on his Facebook page, Help Luke Make History. I think it's important to highlight the incredible resilience of families just like Luke's, who don't take no for an answer and carry on fighting, searching for access to treatments that could save their child's life. The family have asked me to express their heartfelt thanks to all those who have supported Luke's crowdfunding campaign, which has managed to raise over £180,000 of the £350,000 target. And I hope I can ask the Minister, while there is no NHS or other government resources to financially support families when they have to have treatment elsewhere outside the NHS. So what about the future? Not only do we have advances in research to help progress new treatments, but it will also allow us to instil awareness of this rare condition throughout the healthcare system. This will help improve the level of support provided to families. It is usually left to the parents to search on the internet for ways to find help, with most healthcare providers in the UK left with their hands tied with limited treatments to offer. As I have mentioned, Luke's family were incredibly lucky to have such a wonderful crowdfunding campaign, but they still need more help. That is not available to everyone. They have explained that the level of support for families is simply not good enough. We need extra support as soon as a child is diagnosed, support which recognises the fast-acting nature of the disease, and families will experience extreme pressure on their relationships as they have to come to terms with understanding such a very rare condition, as well as the huge financial turmoil that come with the diagnosis. DIPG, as well as other childhood brain tumours, have a huge impact, and that is why I'm asking for more investment and more research and development to create that awareness and the hope of a cure. So can I ask the Minister to look at developing greater incentives for research and development into DIPG so that families and children can access the support and the information they require at their time of need? And can I also raise the critical issue of funding for research as a whole? Following a debate on childhood brain tumours in this House last year, it is very welcome that the Government set up a working group looking at how to increase the impact and quantity of brain tumour research. I look forward to the group's second report, which is due to be released imminently, and perhaps the Minister may be able to give us some guidance of when we will see that report. I acknowledge that there is a significant amount of money already contributed through the National Institute for Health Research and the Medical Research Council, but much more needs to be done quickly, and I hope in the autumn statement that we will hear at the end of this month that perhaps there will be an allocation for this kind of research. There is some progress being made with the programme called Instinct, pioneering research by experts from Newcastle University, the Institute of Cancer Research and the UCL Institute for Child Healthcare here in London, which looks at high-risk childhood brain tumours, including DIPG. This is an extremely important effort led by Dr. Chris Jones. Dr. Jones has an extensive experience in understanding the genetic basis of these tumours and what is driving tumour growth. So can the Minister confirm that when the UK leaves the European Union, the UK medical research community will continue to have access to this critical EU funding and collaborative programmes once Horizon 2020 has ended? Given Luke's example, and that they've had to go to Mexico, it's essential that cooperation and research is global so that every child in need of help can access it, no matter where they are. And could Luke's case be the pathway for better treatments and understanding of DIPG here in this country? Mr Deputy Speaker, although the number of children dying from cancer each year in the UK has fallen over the last 20 years, we must not stop. Research is the key to our progress. It is not right that the rarer the cancer is, the less attention is paid to the funding of research. There must be a unified approach to applying for progress. The rarity of such conditions means that they accumulate a far smaller market, so pharmaceutical companies tend not to supply the drugs that are required. And indeed, research and development is very difficult, particularly in children. I know it would mean a lot to Luke and his family if the Minister or even the Prime Minister could meet with them to talk about their experiences and listen to their views on how research funding and information in this area might be improved that would secure a better future for children with DIPG. So can the Minister make that commitment to meet the family? I'd like to finish, Mr Deputy Speaker, by paying tribute to the resilience of Luke and his family and all the other families who continue to fight for their children. I hope that this debate has made some small dent in raising awareness of DIPG and other killer cancers in children. Luke has a chance. His parents have hope. His extended family have pride. And we all watch and admire their strength, resilience, dignity and love for Luke. Let's use this half hour of valuable parliamentary time to make a difference to all families who are affected by DIPG and similar diseases and give those children hope.
Martin Whitfield.
I'm grateful, Deputy Speaker. And I'd like to thank my honourable friend from Edinburgh South and the Minister for facilitating my short contribution this evening. DIPG is a complex and rare ailment, and as we've heard, the cause is not yet known, but it is important to note that the condition is no one's fault. Luke Stewart, through the Help Luke campaign, has raised over £181,000 for funds from the community and supporters so that Luke could seek treatment, as we've heard, from Mexico. And the result of this treatment is that the tumours have started to shrink and die. The support from the whole community, including a recent donation of £11,000 raised by the Ladies Glitter Ball of Musselburgh, have gone towards this. Luke and his family live in Tranent, East Lothian, and his strength and determination to live a full life has helped him respond so positively to the treatment. This condition is incredibly rare, and yet a second child, Alex Logan, who lives in my hometown of Preston Pans in East Lothian, not 5 miles from Luke, has just this year been diagnosed with DIPG. Again, the East Lothian community and the wider community are rallying around to support the Action for Alex campaign through the justgiving.com crowdfunding Susan Logan page. Help and support have come from many places, including our local lad, Josh Taylor, who on Saturday became the first professional fighter to halt Miguel Vasquez and retained his WBC silver super lightweight belt. Josh is supporting this case along with Eric Bristow, not in a fight, but in a darts match in December. The fighting spirit that's displayed by Josh Taylor, but also perhaps more so, in its own very special way by both Luke and Alex, make me very humbled and proud to represent East Lothian. DIPG remains a mystery, but children like Luke and Alex and their families cannot wait for a cure. The time has come to fund research into DIPG here and to bring hope to all children and families who suffer from this terrible condition.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to pay my tribute to the speeches we've just heard from the Honourable Gentleman from the Member for Edinburgh South and the Honourable Member for East Lothian. I think the House needed to hear about the bravery of Luke and Alex, and no one could be failed to be moved by their courage, the courage of their families, and by the commitment of the community to raise much-needed funding to give them treatment. So I thank them both very much for bringing this story to life, and my thoughts go out to these brave boys and their families and friends. I agree with everyone who's spoken here tonight that research is crucial in the fight against cancer, and particularly in the fight against childhood cancers. And again, it's been very inspiring to hear that nobody wants to hear the news that they've heard about their children, but the fact that they're approaching this with so much hope is quite inspirational, and I have the utmost of respect for them. To just bring the House up to date with what the Department is doing in this, obviously research is absolutely critical, and that's precisely why the Department of Health invests £1 billion each year in health research through the National Institute for Health Research. And it's also why the Department works closely with a wide range of partners for research funding. This spending on cancer research specifically has risen to £137 million in this financial year. This is the largest NIHR spend in any disease area. But the challenge of increasing research specifically into brain tumours in particular does persist. And I agree wholeheartedly that that is the research that is so essential in order to improve treatment for those suffering and their families. As the Honourable Gentleman referred to, the debate that we had on brain tumours in Westminster Hall in 2016, the Department did establish a task and finish group on brain tumour research to investigate what more can be done. Now, I'm pleased to announce that that report will be published before the end of the year. It is slightly delayed. It's slightly delayed not because we're obfuscating, but because actually we can make it more impactful by just taking a little bit more time. So I hope that will reassure honourable members. The Honourable Gentleman referred to the treatment, and indeed, as did the Honourable Member for Ilford North, the treatment in Mexico being experienced by their constituents. And I absolutely acknowledge that's at great expense to the family and could not take place without the generosity of so many people with whom have been inspired by their story. Now, I can tell the House that leading experts from Great Ormond Street and Alder Hey Children's Hospital, as well as their colleagues from Europe and the USA, have reached out to the team in Mexico to better understand the treatment that is being given to patients. Without further data and discussion between them, it's not possible to say whether that exact treatment being offered in Mexico could be considered here in the UK as part of the clinical trial. But I can assure the House that there is certainly an openness amongst UK experts to understand more about the treatment in Mexico, and I hope that that would be welcomed. Yes, indeed.
I'm really grateful to the Minister for giving way on that point. One of the important functions that Great Ormond Street, in particular for Callie Lau's family, provided was support when she was here back in the UK. And immense pressures on Great Ormond Street meant at one point lack of access to beds and support meant that there was a delay to her being able to, being admitted into the hospital. Could she ask officials to look at that particular issue? Because clearly the nature of the condition, the pressure of time, the lack of time often makes some of those delays even more stressful to the family. I think it's an issue that she ought to probe and look at.
Clearly, I acknowledge the point the honourable gentleman makes, but from my perspective, I think the stress would be removed if we could actually investigate more whether that treatment could be given here rather than people travelling to Mexico. So, I mean, my priority will be to encourage exactly those discussions to enable that to happen. Just to say some of the research that is taking place at Great Ormond Street, which is actually, the centre of excellence where we want the childhood cancers to be tackled. There is research to develop T-cell immunotherapy delivery to tumours and also selective therapies based on the molecular profiles of tumours. And University College London Centre is researching tumour markers and drug uptake. I'm pleased to say that the NIHR Clinical Research Network is supporting the NHS to deliver 3 clinical trials of new treatments for children with diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma. In the summer, Cancer Research UK announced its intention to fund up to 2 brain tumour centres of excellence to support multidisciplinary research, and the National Institute also stands ready to provide full support to these new centres, together with other centres already funded by other charities in delivering their charities to the NHS. Coming back to the working group, it is chaired by Professor Chris Whitty, the Department's Chief Scientific Advisor, and as I say, the report is being finalised now and should be ready before Christmas. Now, we know that early diagnosis is essential for all cancers if we are to provide the best treatment and support from the very start, and I therefore welcome initiatives like HeadSmart, which are working to increase awareness of the common signs and symptoms of brain tumours in babies, children and teenagers. The Department has encouraged the use of this initiative by professionals in signposting specialist advice if needed, and promoted the awareness campaign with colleagues in NHS England, health visitors and school nurses. The Government is also funding a radical upgrade in equipment to treat cancer, including £130 million to modernise radiotherapy across England. And in April 2012, the Government announced a £250 million investment to build proton beam therapy facilities at the Christie Hospital in Manchester and University College Hospitals in London. The more precise targeting of radiotherapy afforded by this treatment means that higher doses can be delivered with fewer side effects and less long-term consequences, and this is particularly important for paediatric patients. I would also like to say here that we are supportive of the Less Survivable Cancers Task Force, also launched earlier this year, and that task force aims to raise awareness of 5 cancers, including brain cancer, where survival rates have remained stubbornly poor for decades. And that task force is also working to raise the number of clinical trials and treatments approved for those cancers, as well as the level of research invested in them. So, to conclude, despite the difficulties involved in researching new treatments for diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma, there are important studies underway, and we will continue to make sure... Yes, indeed.
Very grateful to the Minister, who's given us a fairly comprehensive answer and indeed some hope that there is progress being made on this issue. But I just wonder if she will pick up on the issue raised by the parents of Luke, who would like to meet with the Minister to try and perhaps discuss not just their experience, but also how Luke could perhaps help in some of this research. Because I think it would be great to hear directly from the parents so that you can get a full picture that's not just about the research and development of this disease, but about their whole experience of being parents with a child with the disease. Yeah.
I'd be more than happy to meet Luke and his parents, and I think it's very important that, as well as researching the actual symptoms and possible treatments of this disease, we do need to understand the experience that families go through, because part and parcel of the treatment also has to be support for them. So I'd be delighted to hear from them and to learn from those experiences. Again, we often look at these things in a very clinical way because it is clinical practice, but we are talking about human beings here and we're talking about lives. And there is no substitute for really facing and bringing home exactly what we're talking about when young children are suffering with such a pernicious disease. We will be building on the studies that I've outlined today. We will ensure that funding provided for research does result in better outcomes for those suffering, particularly where those suffering are children. But, you know, we should think there is hope. We've heard the story of Luke. We've already heard that he's at school. He's still living longer than his initial prognosis initially suggested. So we wish him well and have much hope there. But I was also struck, as I was sitting here on the front bench next to my honourable friend, the member for Hexham, looking at the honourable member for Sheffield Central, both of whom have lived through brain tumours and come through the other side. And they are the inspiration. They show that with the right treatment, people can live despite what could be a potentially killing disease. So it's my job as the Minister, and it's the Department of Health's job to make sure that we leave no stone unturned in making sure that we get the best possible treatment for anyone who suffers from these conditions.
Here's to Luke. The question is, this House do now adjourn. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. Order, order!